What's good? It's your boy Mixtape Moth, and today I'm going to give y'all my top 15 underrated rap albums from 1996. Let's get to it. The year 1996 saw some of the most iconic releases in rap history. I know hip hop purists tend to view 1994 and 1995 to be the greatest years in hip hop, and I've definitely agreed with them at times. But the older I get, I find myself returning to a lot of albums from 1996, and I gotta ask myself, why is that in particular? Well, objectively, I don't have an answer, but if I can give y'all my humble opinion, it is because the rap production in 1996 was the crispiest, and certain artists really came into their own as far as reaching their full potential. But today I wanted to give you a list of underrated albums from that year. This does not include the top 10 releases of the year. So right now, so there's no confusion, let me get it out of the way and give y'all what I believe to be the top 10 albums of 1996. These albums include Nas, It Was Written, Jay-Z, Reasonable Doubt, Outkast, AT Fugees, The Score, Tupac, All Eyes on Me, Redman's Muddy Waters, Mobb Deep's Hell on Earth, Ghostface Killah's Iron Man, UGK's Riding Dirty, and De La Soul's Stakes is High. I think it's safe to say that those aren't debatable. All right, so now I'm gonna give y'all a rundown of 15 really slept on albums from 1996. These albums don't get a lot of praise. This is not just a New York list. As much as New York dominated at this time, there were also really great records coming out of the South and West Coast. Also, this list is in no particular order, so please do not get hung up on how I listed them. It's just how it went. But anyway, here it goes. Number 1, Ghetto Boys, The Resurrection. So this album marked the return of the Ghetto Boys after they had split up. You had the infamous Jay Prince phone call to Larry Hoover. The production on this album really embodied the Rap-A-Lot sound at the time. I think the beats on this album showcase some of Mike Dean's best production when he was with Rap-A-Lot. You also have really great Scarface verses throughout this thing. Some of my favorite songs were The World Is a Ghetto, which was their single, Hold It Down, which featured Face Mob, First Light of the Day, Time Taker, and Ghetto Boys and Girls. So if you want something that had that definitive Rap-A-Lot sound, this was it. Number 2, The Lost Boys, Legal Drug Money. The Lost Boys were an ill group coming out of Queens. They made noise in 1995 with their singles The Lifestyles of the Rich and Shameless and Jeeps, Lex, Coupes, Beamers, and Benz. Then in early 1996, they dropped Renee, which is one of the greatest hood love stories of all time. Their album Legal Drug Money had all of these songs plus new highlights like Music Makes Me High, which became a single, and the Pete Rock produced The Yearning. The storytelling from Mr. Cheeks was exceptional. In general, I don't think that the Lost Boys get their flowers for their impact on New York hip hop and for their storytelling in general. Number 3, Sadat X, Wild Cowboys. All right, so this was a really unique album for the time. I think the cover art and the concept behind this album was super dope. Sadat X was drawing the comparison of life in the streets to that of the Wild Wild West. You had some standout production from Diamond D, Buck Wild, Showbiz, Pete Rock, and the Beatminers. It's not a classic, but it's a very underrated project that I think should get more credit, especially given its uniqueness. Number 4, Real Live, The Turnaround. Real Live was a group coming out of New Jersey that consisted of the rapper Larry O and producer K-Def. They had a really dope mafioso-inspired single called Real Live Shit that dropped in 1995. It's a super underrated single. The album was delayed, but it saw the light of day in 1996, and there were quite a few gems on it. K-Def was an extremely slept-on producer. While Larry O might not have been the most gifted MC on the planet, he was more than capable, especially with K-Def on the boards, crafting very crunchy boom bap beats. I enjoyed the interludes and obscure loops that K-Def dug up. There was a ton of great sampling overall. Number 5, Bahamadia Collage. Bahamadia is a female MC coming out of Philadelphia. This was her debut album. She had a very unique rapping voice. This album had very impressive production from the likes of DJ Premier, Guru, The Beatminers, N.O. Joe, Ski, and Questlove. If you don't know of many female rappers from the 90s other than Lil' Kim, Foxy Brown, and Lady of Rage, then I highly recommend that you check out Bahamadia, as she was definitely nice. But looking back at this, I see there were actually 5 beats from DJ Premier, which was kind of big considering he was in such high demand. Number 6, Ras Kass, Soul on Ice. This was Ras Kass's debut. This album was important because it showcased Ras Kass as a true lyricist on the West Coast. The majority of LA guys at the time were mainly focused on making West Coast gangster rap, but Ras Kass concentrated more on traditional lyricism. The beats were good, but not incredible, and I think that's what really keeps this from being a classic. However, it's a really great and underrated project. I just wish the Diamond D remix to Soul on Ice was included, because that is one of Diamond D's best remixes, and he has some great ones, trust. Number 7, Smooth the Hustler, Once Upon a Time in America. Smooth the Hustler is a very slept on rapper from Brooklyn who always had insane wordplay. I even remember Biggie giving him his props at the time. Smooth had some street anthems on here, like the classic Broken Language, which was very influential given the rhyme scheme and the concept behind it, and the track Hustlin', which was an East Coast getting money anthem. Another great thing about this album was that it featured a lot of rapping from his brother, Trigger the Gambler, who had a buzz of his own, especially with the Nutty Professor soundtrack this same year. Number 8, Big Noyd, Episodes of a Hustler. So everyone got introduced to Big Noyd 1 year before on the Infamous album, but I'm not sure if everyone realizes that he dropped a really solid debut in 1996. This project had beats from Havoc and peak verses from Prodigy. Some of my favorite songs were All Pro, Recognize and Realize Part 1 and 2, which had insane production from Havoc, and of course the Stretch Armstrong remix to Usual Suspects. Number 9, Tela, Peace of Mind. You know I had to go down south, right, and show Suave House some love, because they had a respectable movement in the mid-90s. Well, actually, Tela was from Chicago, but this album was a Suave House release, so you had a lot of Memphis and Houston-style production on it. Tela had a real unique sound, which blended the Midwestern twang with the slow, rolling, Dirty South production. One of my favorites from this album is Show Nuff, which is the best strip club record of all time, in my opinion. The beat is crazy to this day. I also like Tired of Ballin', Twisted, and Success. This album was a nice change in pace from all the dominant East and West Coast albums that came out this year. Number 10, Keith Murray, Enigma. I think this is Keith Murray's most consistent album. Now, maybe The Most Beautifulest Thing had more hits, but every song on Enigma was solid. It had some moody production from Eric Sermon. In fact, some of the beats were pretty dark at times. Some of my favorite songs were Call My Name, Dangerous Ground, Rhyming with Kel, What a Feeling, Hot to Death, and Yeah. This album and Muddy Waters proved that 1996 was also one of Eric Sermon's best years on the production front. Number 11, Helter Skelter, Nocturnal. I can't forget Boot Camp Click, as they are arguably the most slept on crew in hip hop. This album had Ruck, aka Sean Price, RIP Sean P, and Rock doing some damage over very crispy boom bap beats. This record had the remarkable posse cut, Le Fla, Eshkoshka, which was actually a big single despite Helter Skelter being pretty underground. This also had great tracks like Understand, Clans, Posses, Crews, and Clicks, and Operation Lockdown. Now, of course, this album wasn't as good as The Shining or Enter the Stage, but it was the best album from Boot Camp in 1996, without a doubt. Number 12, A Plus, the Latchkey Child. A Plus was a dope kid rapper from Hempstead, Long Island. He was a super dope MC even at this time, despite only being around 13 years of age. This album had production from Q-Tip, Buck Wild, and the Smith Brothers. It had guest appearances from Prodigy of Mobb Deep and Brooklyn's AZ. The song Gusto with Prodigy was a highlight. Prodigy fans need to check out that song Gusto if you already haven't. In my opinion, A Plus was just as nice of a kid rapper as Shaheem from Wu-Tang. It's a shame that after the late 90s, he stopped making music, but overall, this is one of the best kid rapper releases from the 90s, period. Number 13, Exhibit at the Speed of Life. This was Exhibit's debut album. The beats were a good blend of East and West Coast. Even though he hailed from LA, there wasn't really a strong West Coast vibe on this tape. You had production from DJ Muggs, E Swift, and Diamond D. Paparazzi is actually my favorite song, even though it is so well known. The sample sounded like a real live orchestra. He also had the very heartfelt The Foundation, which was about the birth of his newborn son. You have to remember that Exhibit was still very underground and rough around the edges at this point. This was well before he became an entertaining West Coast personality. 14, Face Mob, The Other Side of the Law. While Jay, Nas, and Raekwon had the mafioso sound on lock in New York, Brad Jordan and his newly formed collective Face Mob would show the game how the Black Mafia got down in Houston. Plus, this album might have been a lot of people's introduction to Devin the Dude, who was rapping more gangsta back then. There are bank robbery tales and drug dealing schemes on top of eerie gumbo funk production. The bulk of the beats was handled by Mike Dean, Scarface, and N.O. Joe. This is a great album if you like what the mid-90s Rap-A-Lot sound had to offer. I always viewed Face Mob as Houston's equivalent to Snoop's The Dog Pound. This is what mafioso rap sounded like in the South. And number 15, The Roots, Illadelph, Half-Life. This might be my favorite Roots album. I know it isn't as acclaimed as some of their other efforts, but I really enjoyed the darker and more hardcore feel to this record. The jazzy sounds are less prominent than on their debut. Some high points for me were Respond, React, Clones, What They Do, Concerto of a Desperado, and You and I Verse at War. All right, I know I left some great albums out, but I didn't want to go over 15. Plus, I didn't want this list to only include East Coast albums. Sure, there were a ton of strong New York projects from 1996, but I wanted to give some shine to incredible West Coast and Southern albums at this time too. Just can't be all New York, y'all. Let me know what you thought of this list in the comment section below. What albums do you feel needed to make this list? It's your boy Mixtape Moth. I'm signing out, but be sure to hit that like button and please subscribe. As always, it's peace and blessings. The top underrated albums from 1996. 1.